whoop. Right. Hi everyone. Quick video today just to talk about the pelvis. It's just going to be a really basic overview of the points of the pelvis that we're going to talk about, or the parts of the pelvis we talk about in class. So if you've been coming to class with me for a while, this will be a nice refresher for you. If you're new to my classes, this is what we cover generally in the first class. If you happen to miss that first class for some reason, you can refer to this video. So I've got my little model here. This is Frank. And I'm just gonna pick Frank up so that you can see. So we've got the pelvis and the thigh bone here. Now, the first part of the pelvis I want to draw your attention to are the hip bones. So right here and here. And now these are on the front of our body, the bony parts that we can find if you poke around with your fingers there. From there we go down to the pubic bone right here. So the pubic bone is center of the hip bones and down. And then if I turn this little guy around, we've got the tailbone here and the sits bones. So these bones right here, I don't know if you can see this really well. Let's see. The sits bones here. So when we're sitting on our bums, if we reach with our hands and sort of pull the flesh away, that's the bony part that you can sort of feel on a hard surface. What next? So when we talk in class about neutral pelvis, I often use the reference, imagine that hip bones and pubic bone are on the same plane. So what do I mean when I say that? Put this guy up on my shoulder. We see that hip bones and pubic bone are relatively level. So what would it look like if the pubic bone was below the hip bones, like this? Or if pubic bone is higher than hip bones, it would look like this. So when we find our neutral pelvis, all of us will have a different curve, but you may find a little bit of a space or a little gap in your low back. And so you find that place and then you assess it, and if it's a comfortable place, that's where you're gonna work from. If you get there and it feels kind of, then you just adjust until you find a place that feels comfortable. Comfort is the #1 priority. In class, we always, or often I should say, open our class with our pelvic bowl series. And so I'm just gonna review what that would look like with Frank. I talk a lot about imagining your pelvis as a bowl full of water. So when I turn it to the side, you can see what that looks like. The bottom of the bowl is here. The top of the bowl is open to the ceiling. And in class, we talk about the water sitting evenly. It's not spilling anywhere. We're in our neutral pelvis. And then when we want to spill water between our thighs, we move our body in this way. When we want to splash water onto the belly button, we'll move the pelvis in this way. And then we go into seesaw often, and we imagine one hip dropping lower down towards the mat and the other one lifting. And so that motion would be, tilting over to this side. And I'm trying to make these quite noticeable with Frank here, but they won't necessarily look this big in your body. And it's more about what it feels like than what it looks like to an outside person. And it's gonna look different for all of us. And then from there we go into our circles. So then we splash water on the belly button, over one hip, down between the thighs, and over the opposite hip. So for today's purposes, I think that's all we're gonna cover. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Bye guys.